oh my goodness, your mother has a baby in her tummy. I said, no, my mother has a baby in her uterus and it's going to come out of her vagina.
Yes.
And they were like, oh, okay. So
what's really interesting is when you say my calling, and I wonder how much of that do you think intertwined with what you would say your passion is?
Yeah.
Or
that's
was?
So, yeah, I think...
Like, are they the same?
I think they're different because I feel like a passion is something that is really like you can be passionate about painting or drawing, but a calling I feel like is inconvenient. For me, it's always been like, I don't quit stuff. Like that's a Taurus like thing, right? We just don't quit. And that also serves us poorly in some instances. But in like, you know, in like entrepreneurship, you can't quit.
Right.
Right. And then when my client said this on a podcast somewhere, and I thought it was so brilliant, he was like, you know, I never knew someone that didn't commit themselves to something and stay that course that didn't win.
Right. Wow.
Right?
What 3 things do you want to be remembered for?
Ooh.
See?
What 3 things do I want to be remembered for? I want to be remembered for...
Welcome back to another episode of Do Tell Relationship Podcast. I'm Nina Westbrook, and I'm really excited about today's conversation because we have an incredible guest coming on. Her name is Latham Thomas. She's a women's health expert, a Black maternal health advocate, an entrepreneur, a best-selling author. She's the founder of Mama Glow and the Mama Glow Foundation, driving global initiatives to improve maternal health and birth equality. She's the creator of the award-winning Doula Expo and The Soft Space, an Ivy League professor at Brown University, where the Mama Glow Professional Doula Training Program is a course offering the first of its kind at any Ivy League institution. I'm really excited to jump in with Latham today, and this should be a really interesting conversation. She's so successful, and I want to hear a little bit more about how she got Mama Glow to become such a recognized and amazing business, just starting out as a doula, and a little bit more about her journey. I think it's really interesting because for whatever reason, when I was going to have my kids, I didn't put 2 thoughts into other options and different ways to go about their birth. I feel like I sort of just did what the normal thing. And as much as I don't know, maybe I don't know, for some reason, because I typically am a better planner than that. And I usually do want to know what's going on. And I usually do want to, I'm usually pretty type A, but for whatever reason, maybe that was my intro into motherhood. It was like, you know, this was the moment that everything changed. I didn't even plan my birth. And so now thinking back and having so much more information and so many friends, which at the time I was the first one of most of my friends having kids. So no one was having these conversations with me, and nobody was talking about their birth journeys and doula processes and alternatives to traditional hospital stays. So I'm really excited because a lot of my friends are still in that baby making process. I'm not having any more kids, but I feel like this is going to be a really fun conversation for me, because I want to ask questions on behalf of my friends. And I have a lot of friends who do home births and are always looking for more holistic approaches to their birth stories. So I feel like this is going to be really, really good. So here she comes. So welcome. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. What a pleasure and honor. Person.
I know.
It's so fun.
It's so good. And you're from New York and traveling and visiting me. So I really, really appreciate that.
I appreciate it. And thank you for the care that you've provided thus far. I just feel, and I'm in this chair, you guys, it's the most comfy. I feel like I could fall asleep. So if my pillow voice starts, you know what's happening. I'm getting very relaxed.
Okay. Very good. Okay, so we're going to start, and actually, this is going to be, full disclosure, our first in-person with a guest outside of my husband recording.
Really?
Uh-huh. And the format with him is a little bit different.
Yeah.
With you, since this is our first meet in real life, I want to do a little fun little get to know you.
I love
and
it.
And also for our audience to get to know you. It's called Walk Away or Walk Through It.
Ooh.
Is that does that make sense? Is it self-explanatory?
I think so.
Okay, I'm going to hit you with some rapid fire little statements, and then you tell me walk away or walk through it.
Okay, I love that.
Feel free to add any commentary, because I feel like you probably have really good commentary.
I'm ready. This sounds fun.
Okay, so you're offered a book deal, but the publisher wants to change the core messaging to make it more mainstream. Walk away or walk through it?
Well, the interesting thing about this is that so much of what you do when you are writing a book, like you come with like your baby and the thing that you're cultivating and ready to give to the world. And then when you get to the publisher, they have a say in how that's expressed and what they think the marketplace will bear. And so I think that in knowing something about this, I would say that there are some things that you can work together on figuring out, I don't like the word compromise, but just figuring out a way to like dance together that feels good for you. But when it comes to the core and the real message of what you intend for people to take away, if that is erased in the process, then you're not any longer writing the book that you desired to put out into the world. And that means that like an expression of yourself doesn't get to come through. And so I think that if it's compromising in the integrity of the project, right? Not just, we have a difference in ideas of how something may be expressed and we need to find a place to gel, then I think it's something that you have to walk away from and find, the right home for your project.
Right.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. That makes a lot of sense. If it's not hitting on your why, then
then why are we doing it?
We're going to question that.
Yes.
Okay. So
I'm ready. She said, ooh.
Okay, I'm going to skip through to you're a very intelligent and successful woman who has a lot to offer the people around you.
Ooh.
And many expect your wisdom for free.
Ooh.
Walk away or walk through it?
Yeah, walk away. I think that like one thing that's so interesting at the time that we live in is that, information is everywhere. And in a sense, it seems like information is free, but energy is not. And so it's like if you have to give of yourself, anything that you do that is sharing your gifts unto the world has inherent value. And there always has to be an energy exchange, right? And so I always think that when you give in a way that you don't feel properly compensated or when the exchange isn't matched, we always feel like less full and like we don't feel in our power,
Absolutely.
And so I think that it's an opportunity to like really use our voices and say like, this is the rate that allows me to show up for you fully. And if it's not this, then like, I won't be able to do it or I won't be able to show up in the way that, you desire. And I think we have to do this with like friendships. And there's people who are like, yo, my friend does this. And they'll literally like loan out our services for free to people who, right? Like people do that all the time.
Before.
And you're like, hello, no, I do this, for a living, but also you should want to invest in what I'm building and not expect that like I would pour into other people without being compensated. So I think that it is a lesson that so many of us have to learn around boundaries, I feel like. And I certainly had like my fair share of experiences like this that were so challenging. And but I've learned how to circumvent. And then the ones that are more challenging too, I feel like having like a barrier, like whether you funnel people to a more formal space. So like say someone's texting you like, hey girl, hey, can I get the hookup? Being like, I would love to support you. Please email my office or whatever, and then take them out of that over-familiar space into a formalized space where then you can have that conversation that's more professional.
Right.
So I feel like those are some of the ways that we can start to like protect ourselves in ways that people aren't looking out for us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great. That's really good feedback. And I have a lot of experience with that as well.
Right. I know
the
you
boundaries
have.
word.
Right.
I feel like I'm the queen of boundaries. So
ooh. I'm gonna need you to give me some tips on those.
Yeah, I can say no in so many different ways.
Ooh.
That sound really good.
I love that.
And I've had many compliments about my ability to just be like, honestly, I can't. I've got so much happening right now. I can't make it.
Yeah.
But I want you guys to really have a good time.
Have the best time ever. Without me.
Exactly. Okay, let's do one more.
Okay.
Because these I think are really good. A new opportunity could expand your reach, but it demands more time than you're willing to give. Walk away or walk through it.
Well, I think that sometimes opportunities show up to like grow us and expand us in certain ways. And so what I would probably do is think about what is in my ecosystem of support and figure out how I could shore up support to meet the demands of the opportunity. So if it's like a content thing, like could I pull together a little team or what does that look like? I find that all the time in our business, like stuff comes and we have to breathe and pace and also set realistic expectations around workflows. And so I think one of the things that I try to stick to when it comes to things like this is like checking in to feel for the yes, right? And so if immediately I'm like, oof, like I feel overwhelmed just by like reading it or learning about it, I'm like, this doesn't feel aligned. Like my body, I feel like is the arbiter of safety and of protection and will make a decision with or without my, you know what I mean? Like I don't have to be aligned with it. My body's like, girl, we're not doing that, right? But I do feel like, sometimes it's like, me thinking through just the components of leadership that I could deploy and put in other people's hands to do so that I'm not, the one who has to do everything or push myself to meet the opportunity,
Right.
So I feel like it's one of those things like if you feel under-resourced in the moment, there may be a way to still push beyond but design a way to do that. So that's how I think about it. Because that happens all the time. I feel like where I'm like, I can't do this, but in community I can, right?
Absolutely.
Or with support I can. So I feel like that's probably how I would, handle that one.
Yeah. I feel like collaboration and working with people is one of the most valuable tools.
Super valuable.
That any businesswoman, man, entrepreneur, anybody, we all benefit from community and delegation.
Oh, totally.
We're not all good at it, but it's definitely a learned skill.
It is.
And it's something I had to learn, and it sounds like it's something you had to learn also.
Yeah, definitely.
But that's really great. Thank you.
Thank you.
That really helps give me a little insight into your thinking and what you're about.
It's so great.
Sorry. It's occupational hazard.
Yeah, I love it.
Okay, so I want to talk about Mama Glow.
Yeah.
Because I will say that before you came on, I was sharing my birth story, and it's not it's maybe a clutching pearls moment, but not in a way you might think. I didn't put any thought, energy, or effort into either of my birth journeys. And just to reiterate kind of what I was saying earlier, with my son, my pregnancy was such a breeze. For whatever reason, I was not thinking I need to make any further plans for him. Like the exit plan was not even in my mind.
Right.
Have you ever heard birth, like the process of birth as referred to as an exit plan?
I think that's hilarious.
I did not have my exit plan together. That was like, it was apparent during the birth, and it was fine. But then I had my girls, and my pregnancy was the opposite. It was draining, heartburn, all the things, sick, everything you can imagine.
Yeah.
And then I was too drained and too checked out to even care, and busy juggling with my 18-month-old, what was going to happen next. So I was amongst the first of my really close friends to have kids.
I was like that too.
Yeah. So nobody had any ideas for me. No one was like, check this out, read this, look at this article, listen to this podcast. It was very much so, easy, just letting it go. And I'm a Capricorn. I'm a pretty type A.
Yeah.
And there's nothing else, I think, in life that I just let breeze by without planning. But I feel like if I had met you or learned about you and the work that you've been doing with Mama Glow, then maybe I would have had a different experience, which is why I'm so happy you're here.
I'm happy to be here.
I'm trying to help all of my friends and new parents and other people who are looking for more holistic ways to approach, their birth story and their pregnancies. So how did you get inspired to start Mama Glow?
Yeah. First of all, thank you for that question. Thank you for sharing. I guess one of the things before I answer that, and you don't have to answer this question, but one of the things that came up for me as I was listening to you was as you're describing being, grounded, earth sign, very focused, organized, and also planning. I was wondering why this particular aspect of your life you were not as on top of in terms of the planning piece, right? And if that felt in the first pregnancy liberatory to just sort of, let it be more, just flow and fluid, or if it was challenging, or if it was isolating, or if you felt supported and in what ways. And so that's what was coming up for me as I was listening. And it's always interesting too, how people have their experiences, what leads them there, and then how they come onto the other side to also tell those stories. And part of my work in, the doula space, but really when I was first starting out as a solopreneur doula, one of the things I explain to people is that part of the role is to protect your memory of the experience. And so I'm always curious of what your memory is, what your recall would be if you were to tell the story, and in what ways you tell that story. So kind of like how you were asking me, these questions to get insight. When I hear birth stories, it also gives me personal insight in a different way. And so, so I just appreciate you sharing that. And I hope some of it will surface, for us in this conversation.
Yeah.
But to answer your question, I grew up in California with a mom, single mom. Two of us in the family, my sister and I, were 5 years, 10 days apart. When I was 4, my mom was pregnant, and alongside her pregnancy was my aunt and my great aunt. And they were due March, April, and May.
Oh, wow.
Back to back, spring babies. It's all mammals, delivering in the springtime. It was, and so it felt very whimsical, and just being that small and watching sort of the biology, unfold, seeing bellies grow and being at the height really of my mom's uterus. I'm walking and bumping into bellies constantly with my aunts and everyone around. And I was fascinated. They also kept me inside the conversation. So I was always, with adults. And so I heard what they were talking about. And I also had a mom who was really into like body literacy and education. So I had Grey's Anatomy coloring books. I had, there was a show on PBS. It was called My Mom's Having a Baby. And I still remember the jingle. By the way, I remember every jingle from like 40 years ago, right? Like
That's really good.
It's so insane. I can't remember what I ate for lunch yesterday, but like put on, a cartoon from when I was 4 and I can sing it.
Wow.
So I still remember the show and everything about that show. And it really imprinted me, but it also prepared me for the experience of becoming a big sister. And then as I was learning anatomy, my mom was, using conversation and how she taught me about the process. And she was very honest. And she was very young too. She was like 22. And then when she was having my sister, she was 22 when I was born, 27 when my sister was born. So like a young 20-something, like having this idea that you should teach your children about their bodies was like not happening at the time.
Right.
And so, so one day we're in like the grocery store and she's in the checkout. She's like almost like 8 months. And someone's like, oh my goodness, your mother has a baby in her tummy. I said, no, my mother has a baby in her uterus. And it's going to come out of her vagina.
Yes.
And they were like, oh, okay. so she was just like, yeah, she's really into this stuff, right? And so, who knew, right? But like, if I look back, I feel like those were those moments. And then my cousin and I would stuff Cabbage Patch dolls, which were like the doll at the time, y'all. Cabbage Patch dolls, we would stuff them under our shirts and then pretend to deliver each other's babies.
Yep.
So we like mirroring, our dramatic play was like sort of fixated on what was happening around us. And so that was, I think, the breadcrumbs. And then fast forward to when I was, out of college, I was... I met someone, add water, I get pregnant, and I remember, wanting to be in California where I had the resources and knew how to navigate a pregnancy because I just knew the healthcare system here. But I was living in New York and I was like, how do I find the resources here? And eventually we found a midwifery center called Elizabeth Seton Childbearing Center on 14th Street, which for anybody who's in New York or was hanging out in New York back in the day, 222 West 23rd Street was where I was living with my son's father. And then 222 West 14th was the birth center. So I was like, the numerology was like working for me. The numbers were like happening. But then also right next door to the childbearing center, to Elizabeth Seton, was a nightclub that we used to go to. It used to be called Nell's. And if you know about Nell's, then you know Darby and Up and Down. So my son thinks he was born in a nightclub.
Okay.
And he became a DJ and a musician. So that's a whole nother story.
Oh,
but
wow.
all of this to say, living in New York, I found a place where I could have this experience of having bodily autonomy and having a beautiful birth experience where my ancestors showed up in the birth and I had this incredible sort of out-of-body experience. And when I came to describe it later, I didn't have the language for it right after, but I remember 20 minutes after my son was born, I said, I have to protect this experience for others. Like, I don't know what it'll be for other people, but this is not what people said it could be. I want to protect this.
Wow.
And so I sought to develop, like what will become Mama Glow, which was, I didn't know was going to be really a business. I just thought like, I'll help some people. And I have been always a person that's like guided, by, feeling and by spirit. And I'm really obedient to the callings, and so I was called. And I should say I'm obedient, but I'm also stubborn because I'm a bull, I'm a Taurus. And so it takes me a long time to get on board with stuff. But then once I'm on board, I'm fully
Full
in.
throttle.
Right? So that's what it was. It was like I kept feeling these calls to do the doula work. And I was like, I don't know that I can. But then it was like God kept pushing it and putting it on my heart and putting it in my face. And I was like, okay, fine. And so then I remember the final sort of moment that I realized that I needed to just do it. I was at an ashram and I was teaching, and it was my birthday actually. And they had this like puja ceremony, and then they ended up doing a reading, like a Vedic astrology reading. And so it's essentially divination, and they throw cowrie shells just like they do in like West African, like Ifa tradition. And then they have like sand and other things, and they read to you like essentially like your path. And they do it like, you know, right on your birthday or like right after, like 3 days after your birthday. And so they do this reading, and literally this little Indian man does not speak English hardly, right? So I'm like really struggling to understand. The one thing that he said with total clarity was, you're supposed to mother the mother.
Oh,
and I said, okay. I said, I'm kind of doing that. He's like, no, full. You're supposed to mother the mother. Like really, really do it. And I was like, okay. So then I knew what he was talking about, because obviously this was like sort of looming. Then when I got home, I remember he gave me some numbers and I wrote them down. But you know, you get back into your life and you're just like, you know, at first you're like looking around for signs. And then I forgot, right? I got back into my life. But then I remembered when I checked my email, which back in the day, email we didn't think was going to stick around, right? We were just still sending letters by mail.
You keep saying back in the day, like that was just
It was like 20 something years ago. People don't realize, you guys, 20 years ago, we were handwriting letters and sending them with to the post office with a stamp on it.
This is true.
My son has friends who don't even know how to address an envelope to send a letter, because we send emails and texts now.
Yes.
And back in the day, we would literally I would write you a letter, Nina.
Yes.
And then you would write me back.
And it would take
and we
a
could
long
talk on the
time.
phone. And it would take like 10 days to get the letter. But we would talk on the phone, right? Also.
But you had to be home.
But you had to be home to do that.
To catch the call.
Right? It was totally different world. So so it was literally this, like me checking my email, my electronic mail, which I was not checking often because nobody used it. And I opened it up and there was this thing and it said, like, you've been accepted to this doula fellowship. I was like, what? I was like, did I apply for this? I didn't even remember applying. So I must have like just done it. I don't recall doing it, but I looked at the date and it was one of the numbers that he gave me in the reading.
Wow.
And I was like, okay, God, it's clear. You couldn't be more clear. I understand. Fine, I'll do it. And it was just more through resistance, but certainly acceptance.
Okay.
And so then I just went through. And so it was, I would say like inspiration was definitely like the birth, but then the rest of it was just obedience. It was just listening and being like, okay, like I'm just going to let you order my steps. I'm just going to keep listening and seeing what comes forth. And I'm going to do what you say to do. And that's how it kind of happened.
I feel like, thanks for sharing that. I think that what's really interesting is when you say my calling. And I wonder how much of that do you think intertwined with what you would say your passion is?
Yeah.
Or
that's
was?
So, yeah, I think...
Like, are they the same?
I think they're different because I feel like a passion is something that is really... Like you can be passionate about painting or drawing or gardening. And these are things that I feel like kind of help you to escape and get to kind of the default mode network where you're just like in a, you know, comfortable kind of like easeful, like meditative state. But a calling I feel like is inconvenient. It places something on your life that forces you out of comfort. And it's not always something that you want to do. And it's not always something that you enjoy. Like, I do not enjoy getting up in the middle of the night.
Ooh.
Right? And waking up and like putting my baby in a snowsuit and then hailing a taxi because there wasn't Uber at the time. And then being in the snow and heading all the way downtown and dropping him off and then hailing another taxi. Oh, I don't have enough cash. I have to go to the bank. Like all of these things that were so inconvenient. And yet I was showing up beside people who were ushering new life into the world and showing up through servant leadership, right? And so to me, it's like the calling, you can meet that energy because of being fortified to do that work. but it doesn't always align with the things that you enjoy.
Yep.
And if you're listening, and I feel like when people really find the thing they're supposed to do, oftentimes it's like, oh, I'm kind of like, really? I hoped it would be here and it's over here. Like, this is what you want me to do? Okay. But then when they sink into it, it's like, oh yes, of course. Like you get to be acquainted with and then sharpen skills and aspects of yourself that you didn't even know existed. And then also visit areas of who you are that come through that listening. And like, I would have known that I was like a really good teacher had I not been a doula first and then amassed all this knowledge to then create a program to then, train 3,000 doulas. I would never have done that if I didn't listen to the call to begin with. But also if I didn't allow myself to be stretched in ways that were uncomfortable.
Right.
And so I feel like there are things that I'm passionate about. And so like maternal health advocacy, I'm passionate about, like all these things that like, encompass the work that we do, I'm definitely passionate about. But what I was called to do certainly like opened the door to expand on the things that now, I enjoy doing. But I would say that if I hadn't opened that door, if I hadn't answered the call, then a lot of the things that sit on my plate or on my heart, I should say now, I might not have known in such a deep way.
Right.
Like, so it kind of expanded other areas too that are important to me that I'm actually able to, execute on or build upon. But I've definitely would say that for me, they're two different things.
Yeah. I think a lot of people can resonate with that because you were talking about that comfort zone and that comfort. Whereas I remember even when I was studying back in college, I went to school to study English.
What?
I did. And then I got in there and I was like, this is not what I wanted to do. This is not what I was expecting. We were reading all the Shakespeare, Milton. We were reading everything.
Right.
And then you want me to like express and explain all of the different, I'm a Capricorn. I'm like a logic person.
Right.
I'm not like a gushy, mushy, emotional, passionate type of person. I am passionate about my people.
Right.
But it just wasn't aligning with what I wanted to do. So I shifted gears. I got into psychology. And then that was fun.
Yeah.
Like I just loved school.
Yeah.
I loved learning about us and what makes us tick and all the things.
Yep.
But then I realized that was not my thing. That wasn't going to be my thing because I felt called to do something different. Yeah. That was maybe a little bit more than what and I feel like I could have been really happy having a private practice and just being in the corner and sitting down and being really quiet and to myself and like blissful.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
But I feel like I had to transition into something that was bigger and more and scary and uncertain and not part of my plan.
Yep.
In order to feel like I was answering the call.
Yep.
And so here I am doing all of these things and learning and growing along the way. But it definitely, I can see what you're saying in terms of your passion versus your calling. So that's very cool. I mean, what ways since starting Mama Glow, which is such an incredible story and the way you got there, what has been the biggest, like, what has changed or what has been the biggest thing that you didn't expect since where you started to how far you've come now? Because you're a pretty big deal.
Oh my God, you're so funny. Thank you for that. Nina, what's been the biggest thing? You know what I would say is like when you're doing stuff and you're just in it, sometimes you don't look up and around to see. And so now I look and I'm like, oh, look what we did. I try to take it in. One thing I will say is like growing up in an environment where, you had to perform and you had to get A's and everything was about like an expression of like perfectionism.
Mm-hmm.
I have a hard time like celebrating.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm really good at partying and throwing events and all this stuff, right? And like bringing people together. But when it comes to like things like when we have wins, I almost don't know if they're a big deal. Does that make sense? Because of so much of my upbringing was about like, you know, do this. Achieve, but like not rewarded for achievement.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you're not rewarded for achievement, you just sort of keep going.
What's the next thing
to achieve, right? And so then the people are looking like, this is great. You're like, oh, it is? Oh, okay, cool. Like, so almost sometimes the external affirmation makes me sit and be like, oh, okay, yeah, you're right. It is great what we're doing, right? I know it inherently, but it's more like I almost can't gauge how big a deal certain things are because as soon as we do something major, like we have something else to complete. And so I rarely get to like sit and be like, wow, that was really awesome what we just did.
Wow.
And because sometimes it's like the things that we're able to accomplish, it takes people like years to do. And I'm like, oh yeah, we should really celebrate that, you know? So I'm trying to get better at that. And just like really, you know, yeah, like acknowledging, you know, the wins and stuff. And so I would definitely say to that, I mean, I had to caveat that because it's hard to say like, what are the biggest things, but I definitely would say that my, like the staff that we have who are just so committed and have enrolled in this vision and believe in it, have been transformative. And I feel like I prayed for that. You know, like there was a time in my life where I had a friend and I watched what was happening in terms of the support that she had. And I was like, oh, that's what I want. I want that, whatever that is making people show up and behave this way. And it's like they're moving in one accord and it's awesome and it's working for her and they are propping her up and making her life easier. I was like, I want that kind of support. And I didn't know how it would show up, what it would look like. And then it came, but I recognized it when it came. And I was like, thank you. Thank you for reminding me of also what it isn't and what it is. Because I also have had not great support. But now we have such a really good team. And so I would say that that's been the biggest deal in terms of the growth and has been really helpful in us achieving, you know, the way we have. And I would also say that like, you know, when you're building anything, like just for me, it's always been like, I don't quit stuff. Like that's a Taurus like thing, right? We just don't quit. And that also serves us poorly in some instances. But in like, you know, in like entrepreneurship, you can't quit.
Right.
Right. And then one of my clients said this on a podcast somewhere, and I thought it was so brilliant. He was like, you know, I never knew someone that didn't commit themselves to something and stay that course that didn't win.
Right. Wow.
Right? And if you think about it, anything that you start and just continue, regardless of what else is happening, regardless of what people are saying, regardless of what you feel like, okay, I don't see what I feel like I'm supposed to see. When you get to like a certain point, you start looking back, you're like, oh, damn, no, this is actually working. And if you do commit yourself, you really have to turn yourself over to what that thing is, right? And really pour in. But when you do, you win.
Yep.
And so that's what I feel like is happening. Like I just stayed, you know, people didn't understand in the beginning, that's fine. And now they get it, which is great. But yeah, I think that that's what it's been. It's just been like realizing that, you know, we're at this nexus. And there was a pivotal moment for growth in launching the doula training program. And then with COVID, it actually catapulted us because we were able to serve more people, able to teach more people. And so I think for me, it's just really like, those are the moments, right? When you give me this opportunity to look back and like, think about like, what it all looks like. I think it's really the acknowledgement also of some of the brand partners. This work is really valuable. It's important. We want to work with you in a big way. And those are things that are also validating, I think, and also lift up the work and help us to like, you know, do more in the world. Yeah.
That's incredible. It's so funny. Something that you said that stood out to me is that you have sometimes a hard time recognizing or celebrating your wins, which is obviously something that I'm a big advocate of, but I also feel a little bit nervous. I'm not one to celebrate myself in general. I don't know. I think a high achiever, but also I think that I don't like attention. I don't I like to kind of be quiet in the corner and observe more than I like to be, you know, this front and center. So, but what you said was that you were celebrating things that you were achieving that took people years to achieve. But you also have been in this journey of yours. You've been in it for a long time.
Yes, it's true.
Your success has not come because it was a fluke. It's because you've been staying the course and working hard and laying the foundation and doing all the right things and staying on your calling. And so things kind of, that's the way they work and they piece together.
That's true. That is true. It's like, I don't know if you ever heard this story about the bamboo, how there was a neighbor who was, going outside and kept watering and nothing was there. And every day would run outside, water, pray, and dance over this like area. And people kept looking like, this person's crazy. Nothing's growing there. And then one day, like months and months pass. And then people think it's like, years even that pass. And then suddenly what sprouts up is bamboo. And it's like, really pliant and bendy and all of that, but also really strong. And then in 3 months, it's like 10 feet tall. And the neighbors are all coming over like, oh my God, this is amazing. Like, it only took you 3 months. They're like, no, it took me 7 years, right? To make this bamboo grow. And so I feel like it's like that, right? Like people can see stuff that like now is at the surface, but underground, like networks of systems of work, is happening and all things grow in the dark, right?
Yep.
And so all that cultivation is happening underground until something surfaces. And so, yes, to your point, like so much of it is because of work that's already been laid, like work that's already happened over the course of years. And that accelerates, some of these partnerships because it makes it easier for people to see that you are pedigreed and you are vetted and you are, capable, but also they see like the work that you've already done and use that as a way to, say like, hey, this is really amazing what these people are doing. So yes, to your point, like you do have to do the work. And I think that we are in a culture where people are like adverse to like doing work. And so it's like, and I don't mean it in a way of like, like, I think there are ways to work smart. I think there are ways to, minimize what you have to do to like maximize the best output. But we are in this weird culture where it's like you're tied to your output, and that's also weird and capitalist. But there's also, I think, something about like when you love something and you're dedicated to something or you're called to something and you're pouring in, you should be pouring in your best, right? To grow that thing. And so for me, there is this sort of, I would say some of that perfectionism definitely shows up inside of work product for things to be pristine and presented a certain way. And I have like a strong belief in that way, right? Of how things should be out into the world. And so, so I think people see it apparently, which is good. And then I think that also helps people feel like they're part of this ethos, you know, because I think about and have this intention of how I want people to feel when they encounter us, like the touch points that they have when they encounter a doula or when they, you know, come in and receive some of the content or reporting or anything that we're doing. Like, it should feel a certain way, and they should also feel like we're there for them, you know? And so a lot of that is just the groundwork that we've laid with community and with coalition building with organizations and partners. And so, yes, to your point, like all of that does have to be cultivated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. I think I appreciate that perspective and your perspective on that, because it's hard.
Yeah.
When you're starting a business.
Yes.
And you're in the, you know, you're in the grind. A lot of people, like you said, they don't see like the struggle.
No.
They and the sleepless nights and the middle of the night in the snow hailing of the cabs.
No.
That's not what we see. We see when we look around, especially through social media, and we kind of want things to happen. We want them to happen overnight.
That's right.
And it never happens that way.
No.
It's very unlikely, or it happens not very often.
Right.
And I even find myself sometimes, I'm like, what am I doing again? Why am I so exhausted? Why am I taking all this on?
Yeah.
Why do I continue to do this?
Yes.
And it's like, because I'm just now I'm not just now getting into it, because it's been some years.
Yeah.
But it's going to take some time for all of my dreams and ideas to be actualized. Mm-hmm. And if I stay the course and work at it and continue to put out my best foot, put my best foot forward, then all of that will come.
Yeah.
And it won't be by accident
or
surprise.
Be by accident
it might be by surprise. But
I love that.
Yeah, I think it's good for a lot of people to hear that.
Yes.
From entrepreneurs and people who've gone through it. You talk a lot about relationships and collaboration. Mm-hmm. And I love that, because I think that a lot of people don't quite understand how valuable and important relationships are, partnerships, when you're starting out.
Yeah.
And how much of a blessing it is to have people who want to collaborate with you.
Yes.
And also to find like-minded people who share your same vision and passion.
Yeah.
I have a really good team of people around me. I feel like that changes everything. It
right?
does. It really
so.
does. And it makes you feel comfortable and able to delegate and to share ideas. And when you have someone who can be in a room or send an email or have a conversation, and it takes things off of your plate, because they know how you think and how you want things, they know the mission, they understand the assignment.
Yes. When you have that,
it just
it multiplies your efficacy, like literally having people, but also having people who want to do that, because I think that there's a culture, like a celebrity culture and an individualistic culture of like, I'm the star or I'm the influencer or and so everybody wants to show up to like something that you've built and then make it about them. Or when you find people who are like, this is like, I'm like a figurehead, but I'm representing like a movement, right? And so I need people who can, like be in a room, and if I'm not in there, like preach, the gospel of Mama Glow, like preach the good word of like what we're doing and what's possible here, and also our vision for the future.
Right.
And so I'm thankful that I've found people like that, and that when people take the course and they're in our training programs, they become those people too. Like they believe, and then they go out into the world and like they bring these great, amazing skills, to support others. But you have to you do have to cultivate, even if they're not going to work for you, a community of individuals who you can just have as almost like it's a support network, but kind of like almost like a board of directors that are
it's
just
a team,
right?
Yeah.
Listening for feedback, folks that you can bounce ideas off of, and then and collaborators. But another thing I will say that is very interesting that I find in this realm is that when people are starting off too, they'll be like, oh, so I'm going to reach out to, and it'll be like, I'm going to reach out to like the top person at Apple or whatever. And it's like, there's like amazing people who are also programmers or AI people just like you that are in your purview, in your network, also growing. And so thinking about collaborating across as well as coalition building across networks where you already are versus trying to go to someone who's in a different echelon in their career. I think those are great people to pursue for like mentorship. But you know, if there's availability or like mentorship from afar where you watch everything that they do, you look at the interviews they do and the podcasts they do and you read their books and things like that where you can get insight. But then reach across and see who's here in the world with me.
They're in the grind with you.
They're literally
You're
with you.
You're going to get high production out of these people because you're like-minded.
Yes, and y'all are growing at the same time. And so like really think about the people who are already here, and folks really sleep on that. And they're like, no, I got to meet this one. I got to meet that one. It's like, no, you got to meet the person next to you because that's a partner or that's someone who has a skill that you don't have and they can help build. And so I really have been trying to encourage, especially like a lot of young people to do that. And then also just finding like your mentors in the areas of work. Like I have so many mentees that are like, you know, in college or folks who obviously I've trained like 3,000 doulas, like those are all my mentees. But even my students, you know, that we mentor that are like in the university or in graduate school or in med school that I'm, you know, like working closely with to help them on their journeys. Like you have to find those types of people too, so that like as you're growing, you know, you just have an extra set of ears. And I think that it's a different space than therapy space, which I think is so important. Having this other space where you can get feedback and ideas. And then bring that, right? Like as you're synthesizing that, bring that into the professional conversations with people who you're doing processing work with, you know, like don't use that as a therapy space, right? Use that as really like a work and collaborative and space for like personal and professional growth. And then, you know, have a separate space to process the things that are challenging. Because one thing I noticed is that like not everybody's built to hear about the stuff you're going through, especially as you're building something. Like they don't understand. Sometimes they can rebuff you and then you're like, you feel isolated because you haven't built the community yet, but you also don't have like a professional, like, you know, like portal to process that. And so I'm like really big on like making space for that. So it's like, it keeps the people who are in your life, it limits the responsibility they have to like, to not protect, but I would say like to like have to take on the responsibility of caring for you emotionally as you're doing all this work. Because it's not a weight that everybody can carry. And not many people have the skills because we've built systems against that in this country. So I feel like if we were better equipped, it'd be different, but there are spaces for it. And so like find a space where that work can happen. That way you stay committed because there are things that get challenging that could like take you away or divert you or, you know, and you want a place to process that so that you have, you know, reflective exercises that can help you to stay the course.
Wow. That is, I feel like you were coming here today to give me some insight into, you know, birth culture and what it's like to be a doula and all of those things. And I feel like you gave us a master class on business today.
Oh, that's cool.
And it was so interesting. And I love that we kind of let the conversation go where like maybe this is what me personally needed to hear. And I feel it's been so wonderful. And I feel like we can talk forever, but I don't want to take up too much more of your time. I just think that your perspective on business and growth after going through all that you've gone through and reached a level of success. We haven't even talked about you being a visitor professor at Brown. We haven't talked about soft space. And those are all wonderful things that I feel like really aligned. Or the Doula Expo, AKA...
Coachella.
Coachella for doulas.
Yes.
Which is amazing.
It's like our Super Bowl. Yeah.
But is there anything else that you kind of want to talk about or chat about or share with everyone before we get out of here? Because I have one more thing that I'm going to do with you.
Okay.
Before we really cut the lights out.
Okay, that sounds good. Yeah, I mean, I would say if anyone is interested in birth work, if you're feeling called to do this work in any capacity, we need you, right?
Yes.
Like right now, we're at a really pivotal moment culturally. We're sitting here as two Black women, and we are the face of a crisis in this country when it comes to maternal health outcomes. And what that looks like for those who are listening is Black women, nationally speaking, are 3 to 4 times more likely to die during childbirth or due to childbirth-related causes. And in cities like New York, that increases to like 8 to 12 times.
Wow.
It's really quite frightening, but also something that we really fight to tackle every day at Mama Glow. And so, but we do need more doulas, and doulas are not the solution, but they are like one of many pieces to a puzzle that we're trying to solve that help us to expand not only access and resources, but also to improve maternal health outcomes. And so you can be part of this movement and shifting the culture forward and advancing maternal health. You can help in a time where our rights are being decimated in this country, where access to health care is becoming, already it's precarious, but it's getting even worse for people. You can be part of a solution in your community to ensure that people have better birth outcomes just by doing this work. And so, and when we think about women of color and Black women specifically, this is something that we need, right? And so, my invitation to you would be to answer the call if it's on your heart, to show up. And it could be in any capacity, right? It could be becoming a doula. It could be doing the doula training for yourself so that you have a space to process and heal your own experiences. Because sometimes people have literally had, birth trauma that they need to process. And people come to our training for that, to process that experience. It could literally be that you want to do policy work, or you want to do something that supports people in the business capacity in this space. Amazing. Come take the training and learn, right? Yep. And so I would say that if you are going to do higher education, go to medical school, come take the training, because you're not getting this training in those spaces. I literally work with doctors all the time who are like, I never learned this information. Wow. I work with nurses all the time. We literally developed a doula competency training program for CVS Health Aetna for their nurse care managers. And they had not been familiar with the material that we were sharing. And that's fine, because you can't learn everything, which is why you work with other organizations to round out that information, right? Yep. And so we developed this health equity training. We have CEU credits available for like Doula Expo and other things. And we have so many incredible, I would say, partnerships and things that are happening, but we also put doulas in the field. And so if you work with us, if you come take the training, you're in this network of doulas and you get jobs. We literally put you out into the world to work.
Do you have to be in New York?
You can be anywhere in the country.
Anywhere in the country.
We have doulas across 6 continents and like in every corner of the U.S.
Wonderful.
And so you can take the training virtually. You can take it in person if you want to come to New York. But the point is come do this, come join the community and be a part of this work. We also have other courses too with childbirth ed. We have other things that you can do. But I would definitely say that this is not a time for us to, I'm thinking about it. And I think that was okay like years ago, maybe to sit with something. I feel like now we have an uncertain path forward. And it's really important that we have more people who can stand on the front lines and help us solve and work towards solutions, I should say, for our communities.
Right.
And so we need you. So come learn with Mama Glow or anyone, but Mama Glow is like obviously the market leader.
That's where it's at. Yeah.
We are the leader, y'all. And for the very first, like Nina said, for an historic, an historic partnership in terms of Brown University with our course being embedded as a semester course for students in bioethics and medical anthropology and OB-GYN and pre-med and public health. Like, it's the material that like I wrote that centers our experiences as marginalized people. So that's the first time ever in the Ivy League for material like that to be embedded, right?
Wow.
And so my professorship there obviously is historic. And so that's the kind of training you're getting. You're getting that level of education if you come with us. And it's a great program, and there's a great community, and we really try to get doulas out into the field to work. And that's what I want. I want more of us working, doing this work that we love, being successful at it, and supporting new life and helping people as they take this new journey into parenthood. That's what it's all about. That
is incredible. And I feel like I wish... Maybe I do. I don't know. I have to tap into that mindset that I had way back when. As you were talking earlier, I kind of thought about some things. We can chat another time. But, okay.
Do tell.
I know. Exactly. Speaking of. But, okay, so Mama Glow, tell us, we'll link it in the description of this episode, but tell us exactly where to find you.
Find us at mamaglow.com. It's just MAMAGLOW.com. Same thing on Instagram at mamaglow. And I'm Glow Maven on Instagram if you ever want to see what we're up to there. But yeah, just come, you know? Yeah.
Sounds good. Thanks.
Thank you, too.
I'm sure there are going to be some people who are really interested and would love to be a part of that.
Yes.
Before
you
leave.
A doula, by the way, sorry. Like, if you want to become a doula or if you need one, come. Yes. If you need one, come. We have them everywhere.
That's wonderful because I'm going to be referring everyone I know who's having kids.
Good. Private
to Mama Glow.
If you can pay out of pocket, we also take insurance, and we also have pro bono services for people in need. So
wow.
So there's no reason for you not to get a doula. You can definitely get one with us. Yeah.
Okay. That's wonderful. Last before you go.
Yes.
Look at Rob. We're going to play Do Tell.
Okay, I'm ready.
Card game.
I love this, by the way.
And this is the gift.
The colors, though. Can we get into just like
shameless plug? And I have 2 more editions that are out now also.
I love it.
By the time this episode airs. So this is my gift to you, which I'll give you before you leave.
No way.
I pre-selected a few questions, then you get to pick one to answer.
I'm ready.
Okay. Go for it.
Oh my God, you know me. I love everything in 3s. And she's presenting me 3 cards. I'm kind of obsessed with her. Okay. Let me just think. I'm just going to pull wherever
you land.
Wherever I land. Is that one?
That's it. Okay, I'll read it to you.
Okay.
Oh,
Lord.
I know. So sorry for you. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. What 3 things do you want to be remembered for?
Ooh.
See?
What 3 things do I want to be remembered for? I want to be remembered for... being nurturing, a good mother, and a good member of my community, I guess. I think that I just want people to say that I lived and that I lived a good life, a life worth living, but that I helped make it better, this place that we live, like in some way. I want to know that I imprinted on people in an impactful way. And so I hope that they just say kind things.
What more can you ask for?
That's all. I guess it has to be mirrored through your own actions. So I have to lay the groundwork for that to be something that people would say.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank
I want
you
to say
so
one
much.
last thing because it kind of came up in your conversation a little bit in your answer.
Yes.
I was thinking, since you've been sitting here, is like your son.
Yes.
He must be so proud of you. You have to be, I can't imagine you not being the coolest mom to have ever.
Well, first of all, the coolness leaves after they get so when you're like when they're like under 10, 13 maybe is like the tipping point, but I would say under 10 you're freaking cool.
Okay.
After 10 you're annoying. Okay. And then
but it's going to change again.
Changes. And so here's where it changes, y'all. Around 18, 17, 18, they're like, all right, you're cool. But only because their freaking friends will tell you that you're cool. Your mom's so cool, this and that. And I'm like, hey, to my son, I'm like, yo, people consider me cool, by the way. Just like you don't. And I kept saying that for years. And he's like, no, you're cool now. Okay, so I got re-cool again. Like my coolness card got reinstated. However, what I would say about him and what I would say about my son and just children more generally and the motherhood journey, and I know we're done, but that I would say that it's been the blessing and honor of my life. And to have a son, because I didn't grow up with boys. I grew up with girls, all girls. And even in my cousins, like it was only one boy and they were all girls. And so I wasn't sure what to expect with raising a son. I didn't even know how do you change a diaper for a boy? Like all that stuff was like going to be new to me. But having a son healed something in me. And I feel like my son has reorganized every cell in my body. Like I'm a different person because of him.
Wow.
And he teaches me. And at this age he is now, he's 21. He's about to graduate college in May. I look to him and I'm like, there's certain things about him that I'm like, this is not me. This is not his father. There's something about him that is just himself in the world. And there's lots of things where it's like, oh, you're just like your mom or your dad. But then there's certain things that I'm like, I'm meant to learn. And one of them is this, which I feel like is relevant to what we're talking about. I was raised in like a way where my mom, she was vocal, like yelled a lot and was just really stern. And I have a different parenting practice. But one of the things that my son and I were talking about one day was I had a question because I didn't have the answer for it, which was like, how do you communicate with people when you're frustrated? Like, do you ever yell?
Oh.
Because when I get frustrated with him, like in the past when he was younger, like I would definitely raise my voice. And I had said to him, my father's never raised his voice at me. So I actually don't know what my dad's voice sounds like yelling.
Loud.
Yeah, never. And I had the opposite experience with my mom. And so I said to my son, I said, do you ever raise your voice? He's like, why would I raise my voice? And I was like, really? He's like, no, I don't argue. I just talk to people. Like if there's an issue, I just talk to them. He's like, why would I raise my voice? Why would I yell at people? And I was like, oh.
Good job, Mom.
And so I was like, because I said to myself, I was like, I've never heard your voice in that, like, as an adult even. I'm like, I've never heard his voice there in that tone, like yelling ever. And I was like, wow, that's something that I needed to like feel, hear from him, but also I needed to like hold on to that. Like there's another way. And he is of the generation that was raised in another way. And he's going to be able to comport himself and show up in the world in a different way. And so I feel like with the wounding that I have and the ways in which I showed up as a parent, which I do believe I was a really good parent. I definitely think he would say I was cool now. But I think more than anything, I think he would say that I'm really loving and nurturing and that I'm just really there to support him. And I would say that he's been like that for me. in a different way, obviously. Like in a parental way, I've been a guide, but he's also been like a really great teacher as a son. And so I feel thankful for that. Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Yay! Yes.
Thanks for letting me share that, Nina.
Oh my gosh.
I feel like I'm in a therapy chair. I am in a therapy chair, y'all. Like, don't get it twisted.
This has been so fun. I really enjoyed having you. It's been great getting to know you.
Same.
Hopefully, at some point, our lives will call us together again.
We will.
I had to try so hard not to just kiki and get in there with all my girlfriend commentary. For the sake of what we're supposed to be doing and staying focused. But this has been great. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Have a good one. Bye, guys.
Subscribe wherever you are listening to this episode and leave us a comment as well. And lastly, we'd love to hear from you. Send us an email at thedotellpodcast@gmail.com or DM us at BeneXNina on Instagram. See you next week with another exciting guest.